Kindly settle down. May I also request you kindly put your cell phone on silent mode so that it doesn't disturb the other speakers and also the people who are sitting next to you. I also request there will be a Q&A session subject to the concurrence of the distinguished speakers. Q&A session, online viewers will be sending the questions as usual to the number flashed on the screen. Those who are present here will give the microphone. Please be restricted to the questions only. We don't want any statement lectures because due to paucity of time that may not be possible for us to take. Coming to today's event, it's indeed a proud privilege for MMA to be chosen to host this R K Swamy Memorial Lecture 2022 since for the last 4 years. And the icing on the cake this year is something phenomenal. You all know what is the icing on the cake this year is the centenary year of Sri R K Swamy. He was born 1922 and 1912 and 1922, centenary year of R K Swamy. So it's a double delight for MMA to host this event today, and usually we host this event on the birthday of Mr. R K Swamy, and his birthday happens to be falling on Sunday, and it's due to his principle not to trouble people on a Sunday. We do it on a Monday today for your convenience actually. Otherwise, this should have been held yesterday on his 100th birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, let me have the proud privilege of welcoming the distinguished guests for this evening to take their place on the dais. To start with, I'll request Mr. Suresh Raman, President MMA, to please take place on dais, and followed by Mr. R K Swamy, Chairman R K Swamy, and also we'll request other distinguished dignitaries. Mr. Navneet, may I request to please take your place on the dais. Navneet is also representing Ad Club and President of Hindu, and distinguished guest of honor for this evening, Dr. N. Gopalaswami, IAS retired, former Chief Election Commissioner, and the chief guest for this evening, Dr. PTL Palanivel Thiaga. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our distinguished guest for this evening. And Mr. Unnikrishnan, former Managing Director of Binny Group and also the past President of MMA, our guest of honor for this evening.
All of you, it's indeed my pleasure to deliver this formal welcome address this evening, commemorating the special occasion of centenary celebrations for R K Swamy, Mr. R K Swamy, the 4th R K Swamy Memorial Lecture. We are indeed privileged to organize this annual memorial lecture in the name of late Sri R K Swamy, the doyen of Indian advertising profession, to remind ourselves of his pioneering spirit and carry his legacy forward. I had read this R K Swamy's Life and Times. Some of you would have read it, and there are a lot of interesting observations there and a lot of lessons for managers and management students as well. And I can tell you many of them are not taught in management schools. A few relevant quotes, what I remember or I noted down: Swamy saw a door where others saw only a wall. So it's all about positive intent and creativity. And also he had a grassroots approach to problems. His humble beginnings reflected in that, and he had a horizon outlook to things. And he stood like J.R.D. Tata for values as observed by Mr. Prem Pandi of Sri Ram Pistons, who had succeeded Mr. R K Swamy as All India Management Association President. He would sacrifice business even if it meant compromising his values. I think that was a man, and hope we, produce more R K Swamys in this world. R K Swamy pioneered and entrepreneured at the age of 50, where most of the people planned to settle down. Today, under the stewardship of his sons, Sri R K Swamy and Sri R K Swamy, this has become a complete integrated marketing services group, and they have subsidiaries in Singapore, Dubai, US. And we need many more R K Swamys, I repeat, in this state as well. It is indeed my honor to welcome this evening Dr. Palanivel Rajan, Honorable Minister for Finance and Human Resource Management, Govt of Tamil Nadu. Dr. N. Gopalaswami, IAS retired, former Chief Election Commissioner of India. Sri P Unnikrishnan, former Managing Director, Binny Group, and past President of Master Management Association. So he said he was there as MMA President between 69 to 72. So I thought he probably will be the youngest President of MMA. So, right? So, and Navneet, of course, my dear friend, is here. And it's a proud moment for members of MMA who would recollect the enormous contribution of Mr. R K Swamy in the progress and growth of MMA to what it is today. particularly his active involvement and guidance and support during his tenure as the president of MMA from the year 1972 to 74. If MMA today has transformed itself to the largest management association in the country, which has been bestowed the honor of being the best management association for the last 13 years in a row. And a great deal of this achievement is highly attributable to the vision, thought and initiatives of many luminaries. Among them, Mr. R K Swamy was foremost. MMA, with a membership base of over 8,000 members spread across the corporate houses, individuals, academicians and students, conducts more than 750 programs annually. All this would not have been possible without the constant guidance and support of our past presidents, including Mr. Sri R K Swamy, whom I am privileged to share the dais this evening. It would not be out of place to mention that this magnificent MMA Management Center that we are all proud could not have come up without the generous support of the industry, which has and was so passionately facilitated Mr. Sri R K Swamy as chairman of the MMA Building Fundraising Committee. Today's endowment lecture on the theme Shaping Tamil Nadu Towards a $1 Trillion State is very apt in the memory of the visionary that late Sri R K Swamy was. His contribution towards economic development of Tamil Nadu would be remembered forever. We are indeed privileged to hear more on the vision and growth story of Tamil Nadu from the Honorable Minister this evening. We are also eager to listen to the insights from Dr. Gopalaswami and Mr. Unnikrishnan, and we would like to take forward a lot of learnings for many of us. I am glad this annual endowment lecture in this evening of Mr. R K Swamy has evolved into a great knowledge sharing platform, taking his legacy to the next generation of management professionals. I take this opportunity to welcome the past presidents of MMA, my colleagues from the management committee, members of MMA, distinguished invitees and guests, member of Ad Club Madras and viewers watching the program live from different parts of the country and around the world. Wishing you all a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for formally welcoming our dignitaries and all the people who are watching this program live from all over the world. Now it's proud privilege to request Mr. Sri R K Swamy. Sri R K Swamy is the executive chairman of R K Swamy Ansa Group. The group companies include R K Swamy Private Limited, Ansa Vision, Ansa Research, Ansa Customer Equity, Ansa Estate. The company is over business interests in many areas, and is a member of almost all the professional bodies connected with. Is a long way to go. I think most of you know Mr. Swamy very well. Honors. Nothing to add, because he got every award which is possible for an ad man. It's a lifetime achievement award from Advertising Agency, AAI and Rotary Club. Gindi admitted him AAI Hall of Fame and many more. And he does phenomenal social work. And personally, as MMA, I'm greatly indebted to him because he's a mentor. He continues to be my mentor for many of the things. I consult him, and the building, one of the reasons, is come up so beautifully and without any financial constraint, because Mr. Swamy is the head of the finance committee to raise building fund actually, and his contribution is phenomenal. Now I request Mr. Swamy to please offer his introductory remarks. Over to Mr. Swamy.
President, Madras Management Association, Mr. Suresh Raman, Hon'ble Minister, Dr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan, Dr. N. Gopalaswami, Mr. P Unnikrishnan, Mr. Navneet, and Group Captain Vijay Kumar, Managing Committee members of MMA and Ad Club Madras, past presidents and members of MMA and Ad Club Madras, friends. Let me add my own welcome to the welcome address of Suresh Raman. Rain has been a serious dampener today. Normally, sir, this room will be overflowing with people when we have this lecture in the past. But today we have limited audience. But I'm sure lots of people have logged on and watching this program live. Because MMA normally gets about 3,000 to 6,000 people watching this program live. So, as I said, welcome to each and every one of you. My father, Mr. R K Swamy, turned 100 yesterday. And he did come from a very impoverished family background, and he had to start his work at the age of 17 when he had not finished his schooling. It so happened that he was able to learn many things on his own, and by the age of 33, his company J. Walter Thompson decided to send him to Chennai, Madras, to start an operation in Madras. A 33 years uneducated person being sent to in a profession which is supposed to be rooted in education and marketing concepts and advertising concepts was rare, but he was sent with the belief that he will do something in Chennai, Madras, which should be outstanding. And so he did. He was actually the helm of affairs, not only in Chennai. He became the head of South. For the next 17 years, till he became 50 years, he actually grew this as a very, very top-class institution in Chennai. And he contributed to 50% of the company's profit consistently in the last few years of his operation here. When he was denied the top slot in J. Walter Thompson, he decided to become an entrepreneur, and there was no looking back for him after that. He also, in addition to building his own company to a grand stature, in the first 10 years he got into top 10 slot. First 5 years he got into top 10 slot in the country, which is quite admirable. And thereafter there was no looking back. But in addition to what he did at this company, he also was actually instrumental in doing many things in the society. He was president of some school society, was involved in Vedic Padasala, was involved in regenerating temples, rebuilding them. He was involved in many religious institutions at the time. He was involved in management movement. He was involved in advertising associations, and so on. So whatever he did, he fully immersed himself in that activity and made a big contribution to the progress of those institutions and objects that he was causes he was serving. He passed away 19 years ago in June 2003. But some of the directions he set for his children have been assiduously followed by them. And if we were to see what we have been doing, I think he'll be quite proud with what his children accomplished the last 17 years. 4 years ago, we instituted the R K Swamy Memorial Lecture. But on this centenary year, we are doubly privileged to have two erudite scholars to talk on two very interesting subjects, both close to Mr. Swamy's heart. In the year 1992, Mr. Swamy wrote a book on India's economic potential and how he felt that India's progress could be accelerated. The book was aptly titled, India, How to Succeed Without Tears. The book was released by Sri Mukherjee, the then Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission, was all praise for the insights and the strategy outlined in the book. 30 years later, that is today, we have Dr. Palanivel Thiaga unfolding his strategy to make Tamil Nadu a $1 trillion state. This will no doubt please Mr. Swamy. Mr. Swamy is also a strong believer in democracy and the electoral process. See, T.N. Session and he had discussions on what ails our system and the reasons of which I'm not aware of. I'm hoping that Dr. Gopalaswami would actually talk about what was ailing in the system of electoral electoral system, and maybe tell us some insights on how those ails were actually sorted. As part of the memorial lecture, we always had one person to talk about the life and times of R K Swamy. So it is our privilege to have Mr. P Unnikrishnan, a close associate of Swamy, both as a client and as a friend, to talk about Swamy. He's not only been a client, he's also been closely working with him in MMA and in All India Management Association. So he's got multiple dimensions that he knows Swamy of, and I look forward to hearing from him. So on this centenary year, we have three outstanding people to talk to us. It is our unique privilege and honor as members of the R K Swamy family, and of course as important member of MMA. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here and agreeing to speak on this occasion, and thank you, my friends, for coming in today despite the weather. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swamy. As Mr. Swamy mentioned, Mr. Unnikrishnan is going to go talk to us on recount his times with Mr. R K Swamy. Mr. Unnikrishnan was joined on graduation from Presidency College as management trainee with Binny's, and went on to serve the organization and retired as the managing director of the same Binny Limited. I think that is something phenomenal which you could never hear of these days. One company is served all through the years in which he worked, and he was also past president of MMA from the year 1969 to 72. He's got a connection because 69 to 72, our Sri R K Swamy was the senior vice president, and he took over from him the presidentship. So that's the time the MMA got transformed many times. Then he was also chairman of EFSI, Employees Federation of South India, and also president of the All India Management Association, IMA, 81-82. And there are very few who became president of both MMA as well as IMA. One is Mr. Unnikrishnan is there. We are privileged to have with us Mr. Srinivasan K. Swamy. He was also the president of All India Institute of Management, All India Management Association. Gentlemen, now we are eagerly awaiting to hear from Mr. Unnikrishnan on recount his time with Mr. R K Swamy. May I request you, sir, please to share your... Would like to sit and do it, or you would like to stand here, sir?
Distinguished members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult to speak in a suitable vein for somebody who's known Swamy very well. We were very close friends. But I suppose when Srinivasan Swamy said I've got to say a few words, I couldn't very well say no. I met Swamy early 1955, I think, when he came down to Madras to open a branch of J. Walter Thompson. They were the advertising agents for Binny's. I was in Binny's, and as far as I remember, JWT had only one account in Madras, that was Binny's, and by standards of that time, it was a large account. And that developed, the business relationship changed into a friendship very soon. And it so happened that within a few years, both of us got into the management association, and we were members of the committee. I was the secretary for some time, and then later vice president, and the president for 3 years from 69 to 72, and he was the vice president from at that time. And it was he who helped us a lot in organizing one of the first national management conventions in Madras. It was an unusual convention. It was an attendance of over 1,000 participants, which included members of the state government and the central government. And it was a 2-day seminar, which was very well attended and very well conducted by various seniors. And on the second day, the Amalgamations Group decided that before the thing started, the Amalgamation Group said we should start the Anantharamakrishnan Memorial Lecture, and with it, Business Leadership Award, which should be given by Madras Management Association. That award was designed by Swamy, and I think it still continues to be used even today. And the first award was given to JRD Tata, who delivered an excellent speech, and the selection was made by a committee headed by H.V.R. Iyengar, who was formerly Governor of the Reserve Bank and later, at the time of this function, Chairman of EID Paris. A word about MMA. It started in 1957. What you see now is a grand place, its own building, its own administration, with nothing. I remember when I was secretary, we were meeting in one of the offices of the Madras Productivity Council, Roypeta. And it was difficult to get members to come along to the embassy because most of the members were senior to me. I was roped in and said, you look after the place. But the first breakthrough came when in 1964, we had an advanced management program in Ooty in collaboration with the International Labour Organization. That gave the association a little bit of stability. And with the 1969 program really put it on a firm footing. Our association, my association with Swamy continued a long time, and after he left JWT, we continued to be in constant contact. And I know how it is. I believe I'm right in saying that he was the first person who started advertising for the public sector enterprises. I think he was the one who started advertising Hindustan Machine Tools. I remember soon after his meeting with Dr. Patil, we all got together on this and congratulated him on that thing. Well, I will not take much of your time, but to say the R K Swamy advertising company, what he started, if he's looking down, he will be looking down as a success with a great deal of pride, because it's made this organization today is one of the largest in India. And I congratulate you, Mr. Srinivasan Swamy, on that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your connections with Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Swamy. Now we have been waiting to hear our Honorable Minister. He's going to be talking on the theme, Shaping Tamil Nadu Towards a $1 trillion state, and which is a dream of every state. And before I request him to come and deliver the memorial lecture, 4th R K Swamy Memorial Lecture, let me formally have the privilege of introducing Mr. Palanivel Thiagarajan. PTR Palanivel Thiagarajan is the current Finance Minister of Tamil Nadu, and he was elected to the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly election in 2016 and 2021 from Madurai Central. He is the son of late PTR Palanivel Rajan, also a politician. His grandfather P.T. Rajan was also a prominent politician. Thiagarajan graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. He obtained his master degree in operation research and PhD in human factor engineering psychology at the State University of New York, Buffalo. He then completed his master's business administration in financial management at MIT Solon School of Management. He began his career in the year 1990 as an independent consultant in operation systems and improvement. He joined Lehman Brothers Holding in 2001 as a trade and co-portfolio manager. He quit Lehman Brothers Holding and head of offshore capital market in the year 2008. He then worked with Standard Chartered Bank, Singapore, in the global capital market divisions. He quit Standard Chartered Bank as its managing director, FM sales in the year 2014. Why I read the entire thing is very rarely you will find such a highly qualified person to come in politics and also be a finance minister. We are all blessed and privileged in Tamil Nadu to have you as a finance minister, sir. We are looking forward to your address. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Suresh Raman, the President of the MMA, Mr. Sri R K Swamy, the son of R K Swamy, and the gentleman who gave the introductory remarks today, Mr. Unnikrishnan, the former Managing Director of Binny Group, who gave us an insightful sketch of the man that we have come to honor and his memory, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, my fellow speaker, Dr. N. Gopalaswami of the Election Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to participate in this centenary celebration of a visionary who created almost a new industry in Chennai and in Tamil Nadu. The true mark of a man's life or a person's life is often only felt after their passing. I realized this in the case of my own father, and so I'm delighted to hear of how many innovative and path-breaking activities Mr. Swamy undertook and the kind of trail he has blazed, and that his family is very successfully continuing in his footsteps. So first I congratulate all of you, and I mark my respect again. This is a topic that, now many states have got an equivalent goal. Just earlier today, I was in a discussion with a few of my officers in the finance department, and they were just notifying me as we were discussing various things that even the state of Uttar Pradesh has announced a $1 trillion goal. Of course, the first difference between us is that by population, Uttar Pradesh is about 3 times the size of Tamil Nadu. So even were Uttar Pradesh to get to $1 trillion in roughly the same time as us, it would still be at a per capita level at best 1/3, because Uttar Pradesh is not only larger and 3 times our size, but it's still a growing population, whereas in Tamil Nadu we are already effectively a below replacement rate society. But, slogans and targets are important. They're important in the political discourse. They're important in setting a common agenda for everybody to work towards. But I want to talk a little bit about how we get from here to there. Where are we now and how we get from here to there? And I'll probably take 3 different perspectives on this. One, purely a mathematical or a macroeconomic perspective. 2, a kind of administrative or a top-down perspective. And 3, people-based bottom-up perspective. And talk a little bit about the things we see or we're planning or we're doing from each perspective. And then if I finish, hopefully in about 20 minutes, I'm happy to take some questions. So first, mathematically, the problem with such targets, of course, is that there are 2 or 3 major variables beyond our control. The first is, as I say, population. The same gross economy has a very different feel depending on the size of the population and the rate at which it's growing. The second is that we don't control the value of the dollar. So if we have dollar goals, for example, at 70 rupees to the dollar, Tamil Nadu's economy is already almost 320 billion. At 80, it's not even 300. So, these things are not in our control. And finally, these kinds of targets are set in what we call nominal terms, that day's money. And when you set it in nominal terms, you have a variable of inflation or the weakening of money that is also not in your control. But I don't want to get into the minutiae of macroeconomic detail. If we assume that we're starting roughly at around 300 and we have to get to roughly around $1 trillion, assuming that there's not any dramatic movement in the exchange rate, then really mathematically we're looking at compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of about 14 to 15% a year between now and the year 2030. That seems like a lot, except for the fact that inflation, even the RBI's upper range of the target is 6%, and globally we're experiencing relatively high inflation now. A whole different debate why we got here and how we got here and whether it's controllable, but that's for a different day. Realistically, the only thing I want to point out is that to achieve about a 14-15% CAGR is neither that big a stretch nor historically unprecedented. So for example, in the years 2006 to 11, we achieved about 10.15% real growth, x the effects of inflation. If we assume inflation was 5 to 6%, we were averaging 15 to 16% growth between 2006 and 2011. In fact, I would say the odds are that inflation stays closer to 6% for the foreseeable future than, let's say, closer to 4% for various reasons around the world. So it's eminently doable in terms of just the mathematical requirement and the fact that we have done this or better before. In fact, were we to hit 10% CAGR in real terms, we'd probably hit 16-17% in nominal terms. Then we look at macroeconomic variables that are beyond our control. And I would say we have some very good tailwinds and a couple of looming threats. From the tailwinds perspective, the diversification away from China, the kind of logistical delinking from China, and the increase in the scale and scope of the Indian economy all benefit Tamil Nadu disproportionately. We are one of the preferred destinations of the global de-risking and decentralization. And as has been the case since 1991, since the year of the reforms, we generally have a levered rate relative to the Indian average. So if the Indian economy grows at 6 or 7%, we tend to grow at 8 or 9 or 10. That's because we have good infrastructure, relatively speaking, a very well-educated and relatively large and young workforce, and better connectivity than most people in terms of ports, airports, internal transportation, etc. So there are some good tailwinds. In fact, we have seen 40-50% increase in global investment since last year. We're continuously fielding new inquiries and trying to close new transactions. This morning, for example, I had the Vice President of Uber Global from the Bay Area here talking about how they could help with public transportation models and new approaches. So I think in many ways we will benefit from that. The one real fear I have, and this is not unique to us, is that we are in an unprecedented situation in terms of global liquidity and global fiscal kind of constraints. If you look at global monetary policy since 2008, there's been unprecedented liquidity, probably to the order of 4 or 5 trillion pre-COVID, and then another 2 or 3 trillion since then. Excess liquidity sloshing around in the system. Very few countries are like Singapore. I had a meeting with a senior officer of the Singapore government last night. They are desperately issuing new securities and soaking up the excess liquidity in the market. In decades, globally, probably in 30, 40 years. That's because you have all this excess liquidity on monetary policy, and after the pandemic, most governments did a lot of fiscal stimulus. So till it was only monetary stimulus, inflation was contained because the money was not actually reaching the hands of the people who could spend it. and so inflation was within control. But fiscal stimulus by design gets it into the hands of every citizen or the lowest part of the economic structure. And so they spend it, and then they invest it. And they do, like low-level stock investing as opposed to the big conglomerates that got access to the liquidity and were buying real estate and market assets and things like that. So it's a real risk. I've never seen this rapid rate increase in the 20 years I lived in the US. Of course, it started from unprecedentedly low levels, but I've never seen this kind of a rapid rate increase by the Federal Reserve of the United States, and many other banks are keeping up with it. So the only thing I'll close this whole segment is that there is a reasonable risk there is a global recession, and that cannot, that the central banks of the world cannot engineer a soft landing through an unprecedented storm of liquidity and inflation. Now let me look at this top-down. Top-down, as a government, our job first is to manage the fisc of the state properly. It is an undeniable truth in textbooks, in RBI reports, in the statistics we see every day, that states which borrow for capital investment and states which control their interest payments as a percentage of their total revenue spending tend to have better growth going forward. That is a truism. I quoted it right out of the RBI book at my maiden speech in the Tamil Nadu Assembly in July of 2016. It's as true then as it is now, or it was as true then as it is now, and there's no change in that. So from that perspective, our first job as a government is to bring the fisc under control and meet those two criteria, that we borrow only for the sake of investment and that we control the interest cost as a percentage of the revenue. Now both those are deteriorated dramatically between 2014 and now. Between 2003, the passage of the FRBM Act in Delhi and the FRA Act in Tamil Nadu in 2014, across all parties, the fisc of the state kept improving. Debt to GDP came down from 27% down to 17. Interest revenue came down from 22% down to 10 to 11. Till there was serious political leadership that had some view. Our view may have been different than that of Ms. Jayalalitha and the ADMK. But as long as there was some leadership executing some view, the fisc was in control. After her incarceration in 2014, things turned dramatically worse. And for 8 years in a row, we had record revenue deficits, culminating in a revenue deficit of about 62,000 crores in the year 2021. We have started to make a big dent in that in 21-22, though coming to office after 10 years and spending about 20,000 crores more than was planned in that February in the interim budget, and losing about 8,000, 9,000 crores in revenue due to multiple lockdowns for phase 2 and phase 3, or wave 2 and wave 3. We still reduced the revenue deficit and the fiscal deficit by 16,000 crores last year, first turnaround in 8 years. And we are on track this year to do something similar. So when we borrow less for revenue expenses, we are able to invest more because we have a debt ceiling, both in terms of the FRA Act and more stringently by the one imposed by the union government on all states using their Article 293(3), the equivalent of first lien rights, where they limit our borrowing. So the less we borrow for revenue spending, the lower we pay in interest later, the more we invest this year, the more capacity we have to build a buffer for the future. Because under the terms of the 15th Finance Commission, if we do not use the allowed borrowing limits, we are able to roll them over till the period of expiry of the 15th Finance Commission, which is 26, after the 1-year extension that the Prime Minister gave them due to COVID. So we are doing that part properly. Now, the second part is to improve ease of doing business, because the government can only do so much. What we really need is private investors to step up, and private entrepreneurs and independent businesses. Particularly in our state, the MSME sector creates about 70-80% of all jobs. And so we need to make it easier for them to do what they do, which is take risk build rewards for themselves, employment for people, and improve the overall economy of the state. We are doing quite a lot by partly through departments like mine, where we are now actively engaged with the state level bankers committee, ensuring the access of credit, ensuring the distribution of the client base rather than concentration into a few clients to make it reach as many entrepreneurs as possible, partly through improving communication and training through the MSME department, whose secretary happens to have a double hat as my expenditure secretary in my department, so we work closely together. There's a lot more we can do, but Guidance Tamil Nadu, which is our single window promotion agency, almost routinely wins Best Agency of the Year awards. And as I say, we're beefing up on the MSME side and in generally reducing the red tape. I'm also starting to have discussions with my counterparts in Andhra, in Telangana, in Kerala, particularly with Telangana, which is the most direct competitor to us. I've had a couple of conversations with my friend KTR. I think we need to make sure that we don't get kind of cannibalized into transactions that are long-term disruptive or destructive of value, but that's something that's on the fringe. The biggest constraint, believe it or not, for the government of Tamil Nadu is not money, actually. It is the capacity to execute on time, under budget, and deliver finished outcomes as planned. That's not new to or unique to the government of Tamil Nadu. That's all over the place. But in Tamil Nadu, we have this problem because our capital expenditure ratio went down from almost 3% of GSDP in 2011 down to about 1.25%, 1.5% at the bottom in 2021. Now, when you reduce your spending that much relative to the scale of the economy, clearly the capacity of execution does not sit around idle waiting for you to spend that kind of money. So some people go out of business, some machines get moved, some companies diversify, some relocate. And so overall, our ability to execute as quickly as we can provide the funds is in fact a bit constrained, and that's partly a legacy problem, as I say. After 7-8 years of falling investment, it's not likely that you can just turn that switch on overnight. So it'll take us a while, and particularly we're very focused therefore on more and more PPP, rather than the government of India's model where you build something first and then try to monetize it later. We believe that doing it as PPP, not for core things like, citizen services like drinking water, but for construction, for infrastructure, for ports, for airports, for roads and so forth. The greater value of a PPP model is not just that we leverage capital, and even Ms. Jayalalitha had a model under her Vision 2023, though it never got executed. The vision was to double capital expenditures from 3% to 6%, by having the 3% borrowing limit plus 1.5% surplus in revenue, plus 1.5% of private investment, either through funds or directly into projects or in partnership with the government in some other PPP way. I'm not sure we can get to 6%, but certainly our ambition is for us to get to 3% and to find another 1.5% in PPP. Again, I say not primarily for the capital, but mostly because they will bring the execution skills, the EPC capacity, the engineering talent, the ability to deliver on time under market discipline of the capital they have raised and they need to answer to. So I think top down, this is the way we see it. We need to ramp up our annual capex back to 3% of GDP or GSDP, which, just to put that in a quantitative model, this year our nominal GSDP is estimated about 24.5 lakh crores. If we continue down this path, we will be at 30 lakh crores or so in 2 years. So 3% of 30 lakh crores, about 90,000 crores. If we have reduced or eliminated the revenue deficit by then, which is the track we're on and that I'm committed to, barring a global recession. Everything is subject to that. Then we will end up tripling our capex in 2 or 3 years. And as long as we can find the execution capability to do that much capex in time, then we will certainly see a huge multiplier effect and not have a problem reaching our 15-16% CAGR in nominal terms. But there's a third component or a third perspective to this. Just because I have the money, just because I have the engineering capability or a company with the administrative bandwidth or systems does not guarantee outcomes. At the end of the day, it is the people that are the most important asset or limitation of any society, of any community, of any state. And since we are in a global economy, whether we like it or not, the final deciding variable is per capita productivity. The higher we have a per capita productivity, the more globally viable and competitive we are, and the better the quality of life we can deliver to our citizens if we do everything else right. And in particular, I would focus first on the notion of inclusion. Different people have different philosophies. This Saturday's Economist carried an article and was called The Gujaratification of India. It basically showed how the investment ratios had changed, how much towards capex, how much towards social spending, and so forth. And rightly or wrongly, they compared Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. And they said the two of us have roughly the same per capita income. In fact, that was a bit generous. Gujarat is slightly higher than ours. We are about 2.5 times the national average, or 2.25 times, and they're about, another 2-3 basis points higher, about 8,000 rupees or something more. But the poverty rate in Gujarat is 4 times the poverty rate in Tamil Nadu. So we have fundamentally different societies in terms of the distribution of wealth, in terms of consumption, in terms of education, in terms of access. This is a very important distinction, because if you want to build refineries and robot-driven manufacturing plants, it doesn't matter what your human resources are, you're going to be picking only the cream of the crop anyway. But if you want to build a wide-based kind of average productivity model where many people get better off and not a few, then you have to increase per capita productivity and increase inclusion in the formal or informal, in the quantifiable economy. So from that perspective, I would say the more we invest in children, for example, in the remedial education program, Tamil Nadu is a pioneer. Our Illam Thedi Kalvi has now been written up and presented at the UN National Assembly, the General Assembly, where we have, for 2% increase in spending, we have achieved a 17% improvement in the remedial upside of coming back to school and having them re-acclimatize to actual formal education. We have started, under the Chief Minister's leadership, a pilot program to provide free breakfast to young children, because most mothers are not able to actually get up and cook and supply the food to their children, deliver the food to their children before they go to work or before the children go to school, which is often very early, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Not only that, in the Illam Thedi Kalvi, we found that the attendance was much higher if the mother was less educated or if the family was poor. It was natural self-selection, and therefore the benefit was much higher to those students whose parents were not educated than it was to students whose parents were otherwise able to cope with them at home. What you'd expect. The other huge variable, I think, is to truly be inclusive of women in every aspect of the economy. Now, we take some pride in Tamil Nadu. In the Justice Party government starting in 1921, women were given the right to vote before almost any other place, stand for office. We had women legislators, we had a women deputy speaker or leader of the Madras Legislative Council. Compulsory elementary education, when legislated in 1921, covered both boys and girls. We have almost 85% of all 18-year-old girls have either graduated high school or gone through high school. That's not so in most other places. In Gujarat, it's 50%. But that is only a beginning. That is nowhere near enough. Every time I go to a school or a college, especially women's schools, women's colleges, I exhort them. I say, having gotten this good education, having come this far, having more girls be rankers in the exams when we were still publishing ranks or in entrance exams and so forth, too few of them get to operate in the quantifiable GDP calculable economy. Many of them get married or, for other reasons don't participate. And so the government is focused on increasing their activity in multiple ways, starting with something as simple as providing free bus transportation so that they're not dependent on anybody and can actually find their way to work, even if it is as domestic work or anything above that in terms of payment. Then the free bus rides enable them, empower them, and free them up from constraints. We focus on a lot of other ways to bring more women into the workforce. We found that though Tamil Nadu has the highest gross enrollment ratio into tertiary education at 52%, almost double the national average and 15 points higher than the second state, which is Kerala. In fact, that was not universally distributed. There was a dismally low college enrollment rate for girls coming out of government-sponsored or government-run schools. So we have now put out this new scheme where any girl who comes out of a government school at 10th class and joins an ITI or a polytechnic will get 1,000 rupee a month scholarship. And anyone who comes out of 12th class and joins a regular college will get 1,000 rupee a scholarship, 1,000 rupee a month scholarship, till as long as they are in school and passing. And what this has done is actually created, at least prima facie, an increase in the enrollment, because in the last SLBC meeting we got the statistics from the banks, which is where they have to go and enroll for these benefits, the scholarship, that all applicants prior to this year's first year students were only about 1.6 lakh. So that's second year, third year, fourth year, across all colleges, all kinds of places, was only about 160,000. We thought it should be much higher. But this year's first year batch alone is almost 1 lakh applicants. So some of it could be just that the awareness is higher, because you can't suddenly decide to join second year. You must have already been in college. But some of it surely is that more people are enrolling because the government makes it viable for them to go and enroll and pays, because most government colleges are very low tuition anyway. It wasn't the tuition that was the problem, it was all the other expenses. So, we look at that, and then we have this mismatch. We have a very unique situation in Tamil Nadu, well, in most places in India, where we have a surplus of college-educated graduates who are looking for work on the one hand, and many companies who say that they don't have enough employment-ready or skill-ready workers to recruit on the other hand. So this disconnect, I suppose it's only to be expected if you expand the scale of education, multiples in a short time. When my friend Arvind Vasu and I graduated from REC Trichy, I think the state of Tamil Nadu graduated about 3,000-4,000 engineers a year. Now it graduates about 150,000. Now if you have that kind of ramp up in less than 30 years or 40 years, that comes with a lot of attendant problems. And partly to fix those problems, partly to give proper career guidance counseling to current high school students and their parents, the CM has inaugurated what he calls his pet scheme, which is the non-Mudalvan scheme, which is the kind of skill and work ethic and kind of finishing program model to increase the employability of the workforce, both existing young people who don't have jobs as well as future generations that will come out of school. And this program, we are working closely with many different models, including with multiple organizations from Germany, where they have a skilled apprenticeship model of very highly paid skilled trades, particularly in the automotive and robotics and other sectors. But we have somebody the other day pointed out that IBM is working closely with us and creating a lot of certified programmers for particular kinds of needs. So we can look at it, mathematically, macroeconomically. We can look at it from administration, from a fiscal perspective, most of all from people development and human perspective. And so I would say in conclusion that barring a global recession, I'm very hopeful that because we will do our part, that the people of Tamil Nadu will certainly step up and put their best efforts. And so we will get to our goal in time. On the other hand, if we were to see a global slowdown or worse, heaven forbid, as I have said in the assembly to my fellow members, as I say here, Tamil Nadu is better hedged than most. I was above all a risk manager in my career in the financial service industry, and so I've applied my own way of thinking and ensured that we're properly hedged as best we can be. Because you see, a recession doesn't mean that money disappears. It just means that growth slows down or goes negative. That's when governments really need to step up spending and support the bottom of the pyramid and stimulate demand. And so, we are better prepared than most, and certainly better prepared than we have ever been as a state, I will say. So let me close there by just saying that in the final analysis, there are probably three important things that I can see if we have to achieve relatively above average outcomes, or at least above average to our last decade's history. The first, I think, is that we should have compassion. To me, the overarching quality of a public servant, of a government, of a party, of a philosophy is humanity, is that we are here for improving the lives of people, starting with those that are the worst off, the least provided with opportunity, the most constrained. And some of that is structural, some of that is cyclical. Not everybody stays at the same place in life every day. For example, today we had a professor from the Harvard Kennedy School as part of our JPAL engagement, and we were talking about purifying the list for the Chief Minister's commitment of delivering 1,000 rupees per woman. And we were thinking about many things, and then we suddenly realized actually none of this is permanent. Once whatever model you develop, nobody stays in the same place all the time. Some people improve, some people fall behind, some people get hurt, some people lose their job. So really we ought to have a system that is flexible enough and dynamic enough that we should be able to find those in need today. There's no permanently in need and permanently not in need. And so we need to think more dynamically about that. The second quality I would say is competence. Everybody talks big. Question is, can you deliver what you say you will deliver? And I think very few people focus on that, and very few people actually deliver that. I'm very proud to say my Chief Minister every day holds us to that standard. What is the outcome? Everybody can say that we are fit, we are good, we are great. What is the outcome? Do your results prove that you are doing the right thing? And to do all of this, I think you really need courage, political courage. Because without reform, there is no improvement. You can't keep doing the same things and expect that suddenly the world will give you better results. You want better results, you got to do things differently and better. And in politics, reform is a very dangerous word. I think many of you may have seen, the average age is not so young here, seen a comedy series called Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. And whenever the civil servant, Sir Humphrey, wants to put a noose around his minister's neck, he waits till the minister makes a proposal. He says, yes, that's all good, very good, that's great. And then he says, but minister, that's a very courageous decision. That's the anathema in politics, is how many people can make courageous decisions. So I'll close by saying that I've been very fortunate to have a chief minister who himself makes courageous decisions, and most importantly backs me, limitlessly backs me when I have to make courageous decisions. And so the confidence I have that we can deliver outcomes is based on his ability to have those kinds of strengths. Anyway, with that I'll stop. I spoke a little longer than I wanted, but I hope it was somehow the dots connected. And I don't know if we have time. Huh?
Thank you, sir. Otherwise, we thought $1 trillion economy is only a dream, but after listening to you, it's going to be a reality, and the number of steps initiated by Tamil Nadu government is phenomenal. Yes, kindly agree to take a few questions. We also got 1,300 viewers watching online. We got already a couple of questions online. After the questions, the people who are in person, then we'll move to online. We'll pass on the mic to you, please. We'll take a few questions, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir. The Honourable Minister will take the question later because he doesn't want to miss listening to Mr. Gopalaswami on this important address which is going to be happening now. Gentlemen, we have a special address. That's why it's a double delight this evening. We have a special address on election in India, past, present and the future by Dr. Gopalaswami, IAS retired, former Chief Election Commissioner of India. Let me have the proud privilege of introducing Dr. Gopalaswami. He is a former Chief Election Commissioner of India from 2006 to 2009. He is a Padma Bhushan awardee, 2015. A big round of applause. Padma Bhushan is one of the outstanding achievers. A gold medalist, postgraduate in chemistry in 1965 from Delhi University. Then he was a student of St. Joseph College, Trichinapalli, where he did his graduation in chemistry. He joined the Indian Administrative Service in 1966 and served for the first 25 years in Gujarat and next 12 years Government of India before joining Election Commission in 2014. He was the Chief Election Commissioner from June 2006 to 2009. The electoral rolls with photos of the voters were introduced at his initiative. He initiated a methodology for checking the health of the electoral roll using census data, which is still followed by Election Commission. He is also the Chancellor of National Sanskrit University, Tirupati, and President of Samskriti Foundations and Delhi since August 2020. Also Chairman of Madras Institute of Development Studies since November 2021 and President of Voluntary Health Service VHS. He is very proficient in Tamil, Hindi, Gujarat, Sanskrit and ladies and gentlemen, let me have the privilege of presenting to you Mr. Gopalaswami to speak to you on a very, very important subject, the election in India, past, present and the future. What do you say?
Good evening to all. Sri Suresh Raman, President MMA, Honorable Minister Sri Dr. P.T.R. Palanivel Thiaga, Sri Unnikrishnan, Sri Navneet, my friend Sri R K Swamy, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, and friends. At the outset, let me thank Madras Management Association for giving me the opportunity to talk to you on elections, past, present and future. Before I start on the subject, let me mention, I found a small connection between me and the great Mr. R K Swamy, whose centenary is being celebrated. And that small connection comes through Gujarati. He made his first break or very important break because he knew Gujarati and he could offer himself for translation from English to Gujarati, and that ensured that he was not without a job. And I am proficient in Gujarati. That's the only small point of convergence. The rest of it is all divergence, because I can't claim any greatness to my service or career with Dr. R K Swamy. Now, be that as it may. Okay, but I was talking about work. Let me start with a quote, which will be very jarring, but it's worth listening to. I will tell you who it is after reading it. Power will go to rascals and rogues and freebooters. All leaders will be of low caliber and men of straw. They will have sweet tongues and silly hearts. They will fight amongst themselves for power, and the two countries will be lost in political squabbles. A day would come when even air and water will be taxed. Okay. Water is taxed. That's the only thing which you might be right. Water is taxed. This one is taxed. But let me tell you who it is. It is Mr. Winston Churchill. In 1947, when India became independent, he was quite upset about it, and he said these. So now let's see what happened to India. I'm not talking about the economics part of it, but 1950, we became a republic, but very interestingly, the Election Commission is one day older to the republic. Election Commission was born one day earlier, on 25th January 1950. It was a symbolic act to say that the Election Commission, many people write Election Commission, Government of India. No, Election Commission of India. So this independence of this institution was even symbolically at that time represented through the Election Commission being set up one day before India became the Republic. Now let me give you a very quick statistics of a few issues. The first election was held in 51 and 52. It's called the 1952 election, but it started in October 1951. The electors were 17.32 crores in 1952 with 403 constituencies. In 2019, the last election for the 17th Lok Sabha, we had 543 Lok Sabha seats, and the electorate was 91.19 crores. That, of course, is not though significant. It's just the fact that we grew faster in numbers. The number of the booths in as of now is over 1 lakh booths. It's almost reaching 1,10,000 or so. 10 lakhs 10,000. Now the one interesting thing, India went for universal adult franchise for all the men and women of the above 21 and above. It was later on reduced to 18 later on in 1984. This is when the men, the literacy rate in men was 15%, and for the women it was 7%. Still, this country believed in its citizens, and it was an article of faith for those who drew up the constitution that there should be universal adult franchise, no discrimination. Compare it with the fact that in UK, women got their franchise somewhere around 1919, 1920 after an agitation. But when it comes to voting, women participation in voting was very slow. In 1951-52 elections, it was only 1.55%. But in 2019, actually they have overtaken men in respect of voting by 0.17%. A few other issues which I will touch later on about the statistics. But now, let me talk about the past. The past, there are various ways of dividing the timeline, but I would opt for 1951-52 to 1990, 1992 to 1990 to 96, 96 afterwards up to 2022, and thereafter in the future. Now, the first election was a very challenging election by any standards. Everything had to be done afresh and new, and no less a person than Dr. Sukumar Sen, who headed the election commission for almost about 8 years, did the basic work. I mean, very interestingly, he allotted symbols. There was a symbols order, symbols were allotted to parties. But the word party never occurs in any of the election law until 1985, 84, 85. When the anti-defection law was set up, there was no mention of parties at all, even though parties were a reality. 1951-52, for which he prepared almost for about a year, year and a half. I mean, starting from the preparation of the rules, then training people. And initially, it was one box for every candidate, with a symbol and his name, of course, but symbol carried more weight. And thereafter, it continued as one box in 1952 and 57, became one box each, became one box for all in 1962, 67, and it continued thereafter. One of the things which Dr. Sukumar Sen is credited with, which is rightly so, is the basic fundamental thing about the elections law, the rules and regulations. Of course, he helped in framing the law. The election law is chapter, the 15th part of the Constitution has the election commission and the law along with it, Article 324 to 329, of which 324 is important. It talks about the election commission being the sole authority for conduct of elections and all matters related to it. Article 329 talks about the courts not interfering when the elections are on. These two are important. Others are somewhat mentioning various powers to the state legislative assemblies as well as the Lok Sabha in terms of election law. Then there are two acts, one of 1950, one of 1951. The act, both are called the Representation of People Act 1950, Representation of People Act 1951. The Act of 1950 lays down the number of constituencies, the delimitation of the constituencies, then the eligibility to be a voter. The 51 law is procedural. It talks about how the election will be arranged, how the polling will be conducted, how the counting will be done, etc., etc., and also has provision for qualification and disqualification of a person to be a candidate in an election. Not much is very widely written about the Election Commission and its work until about 1990. But I know for a fact a few other things. It used to be felt that the Election Commission was a part of the government until 1990, when the inimitable TN Session took over. But it is not so. It's not so. 1977, the basic for the EVM was laid down by the then CEC, Dr. Shagdar. And in fact, he used his plenary powers to start election with electronic voting machines. It was started in 1982. The machine was ready in a couple of years' time. It was tested, and it was demonstrated to the cabinet, and it was cleared by mention saying that we have the political parties will not object to it. That is a clearance, not that official clearance for this. Then 1982, the Election Commission started using it, But in 1984, somebody went to the court, to the Supreme Court, and got it stayed or dropped for this reason, that the law still had a provision which said ballot papers. So the Supreme Court said ballot papers are ballot papers, EVM is not a ballot paper. So, period. It took another 8-9 years before the law was passed, and before passing the law, accepting the use of or allowing the use of EVM, the parliamentary subcommittee for this purpose had a technical subcommittee which went into the entire design, this, that, other, and then decided on a particular model which the parliamentary subcommittee accepted, recommended to the Lok Sabha, the law was passed. The way to describe the EVM is a glorified calculator, not having many functions of the calculator, but only one function. If you press one button, it says 1. If you press that button a second time, it says 1 + 1 is equal to 2. That's about all that it knows, nothing beyond it. It doesn't talk to anybody outside, you can't talk to it either. So it is a standalone machine. Practically, the design is something like a ballot paper. On one side, you have the old ballot paper design, and the other side, you have the buttons. Instead of somebody putting a seal or somebody putting a pencil, this is the arrangement which is done. It has gone through various iterations from a EVM which allowed 15 candidates to fight. 4 machines can be connected to a single one central machine, so a maximum of 64 candidates alone can fight the election. Today's newer generation machines allow up to 384 candidates to fight an election in one constituency. Still, if a Modakurchi occurs anytime again, where 1,033 candidates fought the election, 1996, if I am not mistaken, in Tamil Nadu Assembly poll, in Modakurchi constituency in Karur, 1,033 candidates fought the election, 1,030 as independents, and 3 belonging to 3 different parties. So even now, this machine cannot reach that number if it happens again. Then came Mr. T. N. Seshan in 1990, and of course, in between, there was one incident I must recall. It was of Dr. Peri Shastri, who was the Chief Election Commissioner for a short time. And he had the temerity to stand up to the government saying that deciding the date is my privilege, it's not your order. And it's another thing altogether that he paid a little price for that purpose. That's another thing altogether. But these incidents are not known because T. N. Seshan overshadowed everybody. And rightly so. I'm not saying. T. N. Seshan, what all he did, and for want of time, I don't want to go into great detail. 2 things I would like to mention. One, whatever amendments to law he proposed were never carried out, were never accepted. But he used the existing law, correctly interpreted it, and ensured that the Election Commission's work was not hindered by anybody, and it carried on as it was decided to be. And so I'll just read a few of the things which he did. First, of course, the electoral identity card. It's he who brought it. And it's a very interesting story. He said, no ID card, no election. Obviously, states which are to vote election for the coming year, they all went to the Supreme Court and complained against. The Supreme Court understood that he was firing a blank shot. In the sense that there is no power to the CEC for not conducting election. He has power only to conduct an election. But he fired the shot, and the offshoot of it was the Supreme Court brokered peace between the Election Commission and the states, saying they're all right now. Thou shalt not refuse to conduct election, and you people will have to go for the electoral photo identity card. So that was the thing which was done, and that was one of the most important changes which he made. Then he brought in senior civil servants. There was a provision in the constitution, in the procedural law, that observers can be appointed by the Election Commission to observe the elections. It is he who actually started utilizing it. Not only he utilized it in the normal course by asking people to come, but he made it one point very clear to the central government, saying that for the time they serve as observers, they are directly under the control of the Election Commission, not the of the government of the day. He brought in, for sensitive polling stations, he brought in central police forces to ensure that booth capturing and etc. was stopped. And then another thing which he introduced, again, he did something which one could say was using the power of the law, though it's not written there. He found that in some places 100% polling will be done in some constituencies, in some polling stations. So he suddenly devised one rule that anywhere polling is more than 90%. See, the average for the entire constituency will be hardly 50%, but there will be polling stations where it's 100% or 90%. Anything about 90%, he said, I am cancelling it. It was, whenever you have that kind of a, first advantage of a shot, then, people just don't know how to react. So, of course, jocularly it used to be said, the politicians are very clever, they're not, pardon my saying. So they used to stop at 89%, knowing that at 90% he will cancel the poll. And the another thing which he did, which unfortunately in the EVM cannot be done, is mixing of the ballot papers. See, there are two offshoots of when polling station-wise counting is done. It's known as to which polling station polled for you, which polling station did not poll for you, who polled in that polling station for you, and who did not, etc. So there is an element of harassment which is possible. The other thing is the element of calculation which is possible. So he devised a methodology by which the polled ballot papers will be mixed, and you will not know which polling station voted for whom. This is not possible in the EVM, but it is technically possible, but not so far the technical facility which has been created for that purpose, the equipment which has been created for that purpose. The government does not, the parliament has not agreed to approve it. Therefore, in the EVM today, you have the results coming out polling station wise. The other major thing which he did is about the implementation of the Model Code of Conduct. The Model Code of Conduct actually is a document which was put together by the political parties. It started in Kerala in 1960, and for quite some time, for almost about 10-12 years, in whichever state it was adopted, the chief minister of the state was the person who was heading the committee. All political party members were there, and they will ensure that the Model Code of Conduct was. The Model Code of Conduct is very simple. The one simple issue there is that the government of the day should not get an extra advantage for being in the government, and therefore there should be, it should ensure that its facilities are not, the government facilities are not misutilized by the government or utilized in preference to others. But somewhere around 1989-90, just before Mr. Session came on the scene, the political parties got together and said, now let the Election Commission implement this particular Model Code of Conduct. Mr. Session made some refinements to that, and after that he started implementing. And that is when possibly the full force of what a Model Code of Conduct can be used for was fully known. Finally, after session, now once he established such high standards, it's necessary that others have to follow, have to live up to it. That's what been happening generally. By and large, there's not been much of a accusing finger which can be pointed out in the ECI. There are instances and cases where there will be exceptions. That's another thing. Between 1996, when Mr. Session left, it's only then, for some reason, the electronic voting machines were not they were not in number. They were very small number, 1.5 lakhs, which is not sufficient for going around the entire country. So it is afterwards that slowly the electronic voting machines got to be brought in and used. And the first election where throughout the state electronic voting machines were used for the first time was Tamil Nadu in 2001, followed by Punjab. And by 2004, the Election Commission had built sufficient number of electronic voting machines. So in 2004, you had the entire country going to the parliament elections with electronic voting machines. And over the time, there's been a lot of modifications have been done to the machine to ensure that the more number of people come, then the failure rate is reduced, etc., etc. But the basic feature of that being a standalone machine has not been changed at all. In 2013, the Supreme Court mandated use of voter verifiable paper trail, which is now used. And I must tell you that this voter verifiable paper trail has only ensured or brought out the fact that the electronic voting machines are functioning well, because as per the mandate of the Supreme Court, for every constituency you need to take, assembly constituency, you need to take 5 polling station voter verifiable paper seal, compare it with the results coming out of the electronic voting machine. And in the 2019 election, the comparison was made for 20,652 paper trails with the corresponding EVM machines, and there was not one single difference. So that establishes again that the electronic voting machine has been very successful. Now, very quickly on I'll combine this, the last part to an extent with the present. These problems I'm going to mention are present today. There have been proposals for amendment to the electoral laws, what are called the electoral reforms, but much of it is still hanging fire. The rule-making power to be given to the ECI. Now, all other institutions are allowed to make their own rules, not the Election Commission. Proxy voting for overseas voters. This is one proposal which is there. Then, the updation of electoral roll is now being done. This one has been approved. Updation of electoral roll has become a continuous process. Then, the proposal is for false affidavit becoming an offense, punishable offense. Bribery to be one of the grounds for countermanding of elections. Transfer of officials at an earlier time. Use of totalizer machine, which I mentioned to you, to prevent booth-wise calculation, booth-wise results being brought out. Disqualifications when a candidate has public dues pending. I mean, if he owes a lot of money to Hon'ble Finance Minister, must be very happy. If he owes a lot of money to the government, then he could be disqualified. Power to deregister political parties. Now, the last count, the number of political parties is somewhere around 3,000. And barring 50 state and national parties, and another 50 or 100 other parties, smaller parties, none of them take part in elections at all. And for quite some time, it was being used for various other purposes. When I say other purposes, conversion of black money into white money. There have been cases in which we have found that same amount of money consecutively every year received by the same party. And when we went and got it checked up in Noida, we found one political party had one room with a board, one chair, one telephone, no person at all. And we had to find out who that person is, and we found that he was one of the employees of somebody, and he had set up a political party. And the whole idea being that year after year, he was converting 20 lakhs or 25 lakhs of rupees from black money into white money. Okay, then, so they get a tax relief if they provide the account. Therefore, the proposal is, if the party doesn't contest, registered party doesn't contest, then the tax relief should be withdrawn. Prohibition for anonymous donations, ceiling on campaign expenditure for political parties, ban on exit polls and opinion polls, and election petitions to be separately, quickly disposed of and separately made arrangements for. So I will then mention the future. What is currently, you'll all be hearing, is EC's appointment, whether the Supreme Court should come in, should not come in, or who should be there, etc. Transparency in electoral funding, the electoral bonds being non-transparent, not allowing those with heinous criminal cases against them. Unfortunately, the number of people with criminal record to their names has been steadily increasing. I'll just quote one small statistics. There are two types of criminal cases we are mentioning. Criminal cases, all criminal cases, one. Then heinous criminal cases. Heinous means dacoity, robbery, rape, etc. So in 2009, MPs with criminal cases 58%, 14% out of that, 14% were with serious criminal cases. 2014, 58 became 82, 14 became 21. 2019, MPs with criminal cases 88%, MPs with serious criminal cases 29%. So there's one issue which is not allowing those charged with heinous criminal crimes to fight an election. Law to govern political parties, rule-making power at ECI, one nation, one poll, improving citizens' participation. Now, on one nation, one poll, I'll just mention one thing. Too many elections, therefore, one nation, one poll is desirable. But what all you desire will never happen. So this is one thing which is very difficult to happen. But to my mind, one thing is possible. That is combining the parliament election and the assembly election. Technically, there is no problem at all. Technically, there is no problem, but the life of various legislatures ends at various points of time. Therefore, the constitutional amendments, etc., is a messy affair, so it may not happen. But one thing is possible in my mind. Over a period of about 10-15 years, it's possible to bring two elections twice in 5 years, somewhere one in the middle, like the USA, where after 2 years there is an election and the president's election happens once in 4 years. In between, there is an election at the end of 2 years. It is possible by slightly rearranging some of the timings of the state elections into one slot at the end of 2.5 years, and the parliament elections coming at the end of every 5 years. But along with that, there could be it could lead to certain advantage. One, there should be no use of Article 365. 365 for dissolution of any assembly should be totally done away with. Maybe the only ground on which you can either disable an assembly for a short period of time or dissolve it is only external aggression. This is one. Secondly, I think a law should be passed saying that there can be no dissolution in between. If there is a proposal for no confidence motion in the government, it should come along with a proposal for an alternative government. These advantages can come, but that is in the future. And now, one point which I would like to mention is when I said citizens' participation, it's very unfortunate that participation in elections in the cities has been fairly at a lower level. I mean, you find, for instance, in Tamil Nadu, the average is 73%. Chennai, all the three constituencies will not top 60%. There is a 15% gap between Chennai voting, and this is true of all the metropolitan cities. In fact, in the election commission, we never fix a polling date on a Monday or a Friday in any of the metropolitan towns, because then it becomes an extended holiday. So we would always do it right in the middle of the week. Now, let me then read one further quote and then ask for, when I talk about this metropolitan areas not voting well, which is a very unfortunate thing, I have a clip which I would like to play for you, but before that, I'll just read one more. Men will look regretfully back to the old regime of comparative justice and efficient, peaceful, and more or less honest administration. The only thing gained will be that, as a race, we will be saved from dishonor and subordination. Hope lies only in universal education by which right conduct, fear of God, and love will be developed among the citizens from childhood. It's only if we succeed in this that Swaraj will mean happiness. Otherwise, it will mean grinding injustices and tyranny of wealth. This is from Rajaji's prison records of 1920-21. Now let me, this is a 2-minute clip. Sorry. Okay.
We can watch the video after that.
Okay, no problem. No.
Don't mind.
Yeah, no.
Independent India's first voter, Shyam Sharan Negi, died on November 5 morning at his residence in Kinnur in Himachal Pradesh. Negi was over 106 years old. Popularly known as Master Shyam, he became the first voter of Indian democracy as the general polls of the country were conducted in January and February 1952. Keeping in mind the snow and the weather conditions, the polls were conducted in the month of October 1951 in Himachal Pradesh. Negi has participated in every Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha and all local body elections since 1951. Born in July 1917 in the tribal district of Kinnur in Himachal Pradesh, Negi has been a state icon since 2014. He has cast his vote 16 times in the Lok Sabha elections. According to the Chief Electoral Office of Himachal, Negi, a teacher by profession, the centenarian has never missed an opportunity to vote.
तो हम आपको सम्मानित कर रहे हैं क्योंकि आप एक प्रेरणा है वोटर्स के लिए, जो भारत का मतदाता है, खासकर जो युवा मतदाता है, जो जी चुराता है अपने वोटिंग से। ऐसे लोग हैं जो जी चुराते हैं, अपने मत का उपयोग नहीं करते हैं। उनको आपके बारे में बता के हम प्रेरणा देते हैं कि उनसे सीखिए। वो इस उम्र में भी पहले मतदाता होकर आज तक भी वोट कर रहे हैं।
The Election Commission said that on November 3rd, Negi had cast his vote through the postal ballot for the state's assembly polls. The Election Commission mourned Negi's demise and said that he had a great faith in democracy.
Shyam Sharan Negi was all of 106 years when he voted on November 3 and he passed away a few days later. Why can't our brethren in all the cities take a modicum of that commitment from people like Shyam Sharan Negi? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great insights. Yes, kindly agree to take few questions. We've got maybe few of them, 2, 3 of them. Anybody got any question? Otherwise, we've got a couple of questions online. I can move. Yes, can you pass the mic, please? Short and brief questions, please, sir. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, Chodana Chair, President Tamil Chamber of Commerce. Regarding this, the anti-defection law came to exist because of protecting the democracy, sudden changeover as toppling the state governments. But taking shelter into this, minimum 1/3 or some clauses there. But so many cases are occurring all over India. So we have to revisit that or to change that to save the democracy.
See,
Yes.
hello. See, the anti-defection law was made not for you and me. The anti-defection law was made because the politicians got concerned about his power getting lost. Okay, so I think let the politicians decide what is to be done, and if they don't do it, vote them out. That's the easier way.
But
Very unfortunately, just after getting elected in one party, people change sides. Okay. Now, a time should come that there should be a law which says that you can resign, join the election again, and then do it. But that's where people like us should be able to raise the voice and ask.
Thank you, sir. We've got a number of questions. I'll just take 2 online questions before we close. We have really overshot. Here's a question from Mr. Anantharaman from Chennai. He says, sir, what are your suggestions to keep ECI independent and transparent, starting with the selection of election commissioner? Selection of chief election commissioner. What are your suggestions to keep election commissioner of India independent and transparent, starting with the selection of CECs?
Okay, now I want to ask a question, but I can't ask the question because I am afraid of contempt of court. You understand what it is. Look, I mean, barring 1 or 2 instances, we've had something like 25 CECs in all these years. Barring 1 or 2 instances, there's not been a problem at all. To my mind, okay, there's one now with so much of finger pointing, accusing things coming out. Maybe it will be better if the selection committee consists of a person from the opposition also. But that doesn't mean that they will not stop criticizing. It's something like this. Tamil ரொம்ப அழகா சொல்லுவாங்க அத. உனக்கு வந்தா ரத்தம் எனக்கு வந்தா தக்காளி சட்னியான்னு கேட்பான். அந்த மாதிரி see, if when I lose the election, it's the voting machine which has been manipulated. When I win the election, some are very in all humility will say that they have been I have been voted by my voters, I have been selected. Others will say I won with my ability. But always you blame the electronic voting machine for this. Therefore, now it is slightly shifted from there into the election commission finger pointing on the election commission. But tell me, we have seen 25 CECs. Where has it gone wrong? Maybe 1 or 2 cases. It can always happen. In fact, when somebody from outside was included in one of the selections, not in the CEC but in another organization called CBI, something went wrong. So is it possible for us to go and ask, saying that you were there, still it happened? I can't say more openly than this. So I'm stopping it there. So the point is that the chair has a dynamic. The chair has a dynamic, and when you come and sit there, you realize that you have been given such an honor by this country that it's your duty, bounden duty, to ensure even if you don't add value to the place, don't devalue it.
Thank you, sir. One last question for the evening. It's a question from Mr. Shanmugh Sundaram, Coimbatore. It's a political question, sir. If you wish, you can answer, otherwise you can skip it. How come Gujarat has multiple phases of polls while the Election Commission has been holding single-day polling, many states, including Tamil Nadu, which is a larger state than Gujarat's?
See, I may be accused of starting this 2-day poll in Gujarat. So it is nothing new. I did it in 2007. I can't go into the entire question. There were reasons for this. Because while Gujarat otherwise is a normally peaceful state in terms of election, a peculiar situation arose in 2 districts of Saurashtra and in the district of Surat, which is separated by the Gulf of Cambay. There were 50,000 voters which were common to these 2 districts, to Surat and the 2 districts of Saurashtra. The reason being that most of the persons who work as in the diamond cutting and polishing industry come from those 2 districts in Saurashtra and work in Surat. Now, they have their names in their native place, they have their names in Surat. We found duplicates of 50,000 and made an announcement in the newspapers that there are 50,000 duplicate names. You cannot, under the law, have your name more than one place. Therefore, choose where you would like to have. Only 2,000 people turned up to say that, all right, now we will keep it in our native place, we will keep it in Surat. So we had to combine the election for that area with this area in one go. The question of, security personnel, etc., etc. Therefore, we had to go for a second phase. Now, you would have seen, I'm just drawing parallel to it. You would have seen just before the polling in Tamil Nadu, something like 15,000 buses or 1,500 buses with 100 persons each travel from Chennai out to various parts of Tamil Nadu. I can definitely say that there will be quite a few duplications between those districts and here. It may not be deliberate. What happens is, there you would like to keep your name. Here what happens is, you're not there, somebody comes to your house and says, who is living here in your neighborhood? Many of the flats this happens. Somebody in the flat says that so-and-so is living here, so-and-so is living in this flat and all this. The names are taken and enrolled. In fact, recently the Tamil Nadu CEOs announced something like 4 lakh duplicate names. Where does it come from? The only answer to that, to clean up is to link Aadhaar. But the moment we talk about Aadhaar, everybody gets jittery. My privacy, my foot. The moment you start having a 5G phone or 4G phone, your privacy is lost for good. You don't have any privacy at all. But when you talk about linking Aadhaar, suddenly everybody becomes very hyper on privacy. Damn it. Anyway.
Thank you, sir. Typical of a Chief Election Commissioner. Very, very bold and straightforward answer. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our Chief Election Commissioner for sharing. May I request Mr. Suresh and Swamy to step forward and do the honor of presenting the memento. Swamy, sir, may I request Mr. Swamy and Suresh step forward, do the honor of presenting the memento to our distinguished guest of honor. Mr. Unnikrishnan, sir, can you step forward, accept the memento. Thank you, sir. Let me have the privilege of requesting Mr. Navneet to deliver a formal vote of thanks. He is Secretary of we all know Navneet. He is the CEO of the Hindu and is also from the Secretary to Advertisement Club of Tamil.
Thanks, Captain. The Advertising Club Madras owes a lot to Mr. R K Swamy and is delighted to be part of this event. On behalf of the Advertising Club Madras, thanks to Mr. Sundar Swamy and Mr. Shekhar Swamy and MMA for this partnership. Thanks to all the wonderful speakers for taking us down the memory lane and also showing us a glimpse of the future. Thanks Mr. Unnikrishnan, Dr. Palanivel, Thiaga, Rajan and Dr. M. Gopalaswami. Thanks to all of you for being a wonderful audience, both online and offline. And finally, thanks to Mr. R K Swamy for continuing to inspire us. Mr. R K Swamy, we are sure you're in a good place, and I hope you can hear us. If you can hear us, happy 100th birthday. May we also request you to use your powers of reasoning and persuasion with the Creator and ensure He makes a few more like you. The world of marketing, advertising and management in specific, and the world of humanity in general is better off with a few more like you. On that note, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Navneet. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us in spite of such inclement weather. I am quite sure you would have enjoyed the evening as much as we enjoyed hosting this. Thanks so much. Get back home safe, and the weather is quite fine outside. Till we meet again, bye-bye. Good night.